Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining this session today. My name is Nick Griffin, and together with Alan Howard, I'll be presenting this webinar on moving from a linear to a circular economy from a lighting industry perspective. The presentation will be about 20 minutes long. There'll be a Q&A session at the end. Please place any questions you have in the question box. The session will be recorded and available online afterwards, and a handout is available in the control panel, which you can hopefully see. And I'll now let Alan introduce himself.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. My name's Allan Howard. I'm Group Technical Director for Lighting and Energy Solutions based in the UK. I've got over 40 years of experience in all applications of artificial light and lighting, design, assessment, occlusive light, etc. Over the years, I've contributed and authored a wide range of UK and international standards and guidance documents regarding the subject of light and lighting.
And I'm Nick Griffin, Associate at WSP in the UK. I've got 14 years experience in all aspects of lighting design and consultancy, and I'm the capability lead in our business for lighting technical expertise and tunnel lighting. I'll be covering the first half of this presentation, going over the background to circular economy and how it differs from the traditional supply chain and product life cycle. We will touch on the importance of net zero and how the circular economy feeds into that from a lighting perspective. We'll look at the problem, ways to address it, what is happening here in the UK, and how a circular mindset may be applied. And as mentioned, there'll be time for a Q&A at the end. Next slide, please. The overarching impetus for a circular economy is the removal of human-generated carbon emissions, as noted here, via completely negating the amount of greenhouse gases produced by human activity. There are various steps to achieving this, including mitigating the carbon footprint of the activity, process, or product. And within WSP, we have an ongoing process to reduce the carbon content of our designs, including our lighting designs. And next slide, please. So the traditional supply chain model that we're all familiar with is based on take, make, and waste. We extract resources, produce, distribute, and use items, and then dispose of them. This is an unsustainable methodology which assumes both infinite resources and the infinite ability of the planet to heal itself. Next slide, please. This take, make, waste model generates significant electronic waste, in part as a result of our industry. E-waste is the fastest growing waste stream in the world, generating 54 million tons per year, the equivalent volume of 350 cruise ships. It goes without saying that repairing a product, rather than throwing it away, prevents such waste and the inherent carbon associated with it. Next slide, please. But repair has historically not been on the electronics industry's mind. Ideally, products would last longer and have repair built into their design. There would be ideally a right to repair, easily accessible by consumers. However, many barriers have been put in the way of consumers, owners, and operators. The consensus of many owners and legislators is now that planned obsolescence has gone too far. Next slide, please. In Europe, new legislation and standards have been brought in to try and address this. Rather than take, make, waste, a move to reuse, refurbish, and repair. And particular obligations are placed on manufacturers of products by these standards, guidance, and legislation that you see there. Next slide, please. The ethos of this legislation that has been brought in and continues to be brought in is to go beyond even the contemporary standards of recycling. Rather than take, make, waste, a move to reuse, refurbish, and repair. At the heart of this is not simply that products or parts can be recycled, but ensuring products and parts can be refurbished, upgraded, or changed into something else, recycling being a last resort and waste being eliminated. And next slide, please. So what counts as complying with the circular economy? Well, it's not binary. There's a scale, a spectrum of compliance. Some older products are more obviously non-compliant, but as products are developed more with the circular economy in mind, there are fine lines between assessing compliance at a product level. And there's two images on the right there of the internals of different lighting units, essentially very similar on the outside. One is far more modular and upgradable than the other. And so circular compliance comes right down to the smallest components, right down to the very fixings that are holding parts of that product together. And with that in mind, Allan will now go through the particular guidance that has been developed in the UK.
Thank you very much, Nick. So within the UK, from a lighting perspective, the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers have developed a document called TM66, which was issued late last year. And as WSP, we're very proud to have supported CIBSE within the development of this document, looking at the development of some of the chapters. We are at the beginning of this process. This is a new concept, effectively, and we've got to start somewhere. So TM66 offers practical guidance on how to consider assessing a product, a luminaire in this case, for circular economy compliance. It has an assessment method, and it looks at how design and manufacturing processes may comply with the various requirements that we're discussing. Within TM66, we've got two areas. One's called See and Make, and that's the assessment of the product by the manufacturers. Essentially, it's a straightforward indicator, something to do at a minimal cost, but to give an indication as to how circular economy a product is. And you do that through a checklist, and it's fairly auditable. And the picture here just shows how one manufacturer has looked at products and how the different bits and pieces can come together within a luminaire that could then be interchanged, upgraded, or whatever. The other side is CM specify, and that's really for us as designers. It allows us to look at the data provided and allows us to do a quick comparison between two or more products to assess their circular economy compliance and get some assurance as to how the manufacturer has presented the data. And as it stands at the moment, this is a self-assessed process. Now, what we're looking at is a comprehensible standardized scoring system for circular economy. The assessment of products is done on a scale of 0 to 4. And what we want to do is promote the supply chain to move from 0 through to 4 as quickly and effectively as possible. And the table there just gives us a banding of how we will consider a scoring and how circular economy that is. So essentially, a luminaire will come with a circular economy compliance number. And what we'd like to see in future is in Europe, if we go and buy a car, we look at a Euro NCAP safety rating for the car, and we look for a high number if we're a purchaser. We'd like to see the same sort of effect occur from a luminaire or another product, where we look for a good score or a good label indicating a good level of circular economy compliance. As I say, the scale is 0 to 4. 0 is no evidence, and that moves all the way through to 4, where it is an outstanding performance. We've got design elements, attributes, and services aligning to circular economy goals, and it delivers ecological regeneration and social responsibility from the manufacturer. And this is just the cover of the document. The actual document itself is comprehensive. We've got the cover, we've then got an introduction and instructions section. And then we've got the 4 areas that we really look at that I'll touch in the moment of product design, manufacturing, materials, ecosystem. And then we've got a way of how we take that information to get a result and a score. And then we've got a resources section that are to assist the whole process. And if we're looking at those 4 sections, if we look at product design, we want to understand reusability of the luminaire. Is it upgradable, and how upgradable is it? How repairable is it? How durable is it? What sort of fixings are used, as opposed to, say, glues and adhesives? From the manufacturing point of view, we want to understand the supply chain, where are components sourced from, what is the mileage travelled for them? Are they remanufactured? What sort of corporate responsibility does the manufacturer themselves hold and promote? If we look at materials, obviously we're looking at the quantity and percentages of raw materials against recycled materials within the product. We want to understand their packaging. What sort of packaging do they use? What sort of innovations do they bring to the whole production process, and how do they source and bring in perhaps natural materials within that? And then the last one is the ecosystem. So it's looking at how the product could be reused. So let's take the product back, let's refurbish it, let's upgrade it and put it back into the supply chain. What sort of supplier commitment exists for actually taking their products back at the end of use and upgrading them? And then what sort of warranties would be provided as part of that? And this is just an example of one of the sheets where we're looking at evidence. And if we look at this from the luminaire, we can see that one of the first options is the range of optics. If a luminaire's only got one set of optics, then it's quite niche as to its application. Whereas if it's got a whole wide range of optics that can be interchanged, etc., it's obviously got a much wider range of applications and therefore is more of a general type of product and would score higher in that case. So when we've looked at all the 4 categories, we have a points that they will score. We have a maximum point value for each of the categories, and then we can do an overall assessment and performance rating. And from the point of view of this example, we can see that the luminaire in question scores 0.2, and from that point of view, it has a very poor circular economy performance. And obviously what we want to do is get everybody to score as high a score as possible. Now within this, this is different. We're going to need a mindset change, really. I need to have a reboot as to how everybody thinks about these. And of course, this will also help achieve a number of the UN Sustainability Development Goals. We can see here that it clearly addresses goals 9, 13, 11 and 12. But it also contributes to a number of the other UN sustainability goals as well. And we're seeing now that a lot of clients and a lot of tenders are actually asking us to how within our work are we looking to support and produce designs, etc., that help achieve or help the end user achieve these targets and these goals. So from a client point of view, the client's got to consider their policy. Why do I want to do this? What's it going to mean to me and everything? And in part, what they've got to start to understand is the whole life costing, because a circular economy compliant product might be more expensive than one that's not. But if you look at the whole life costing, the fact that you can upgrade it, you can repair it, you can service it, etc., whereas another product you might not be able to. And therefore, taking a whole life costing perspective, we can reduce the actual cost of the whole installation. And that's particularly important if we look at a lighting installation where 90% of the carbon consumed in the whole life costing approach for a lighting installation is during the in-use phase. So again, we've got to look at that. And they may see the benefit in refurbishment of products and the reuse of these, and also look at what they want to do with it at the end of the asset's life. Why, when they move into an existing premise, do they want to rip everything out and start everything from scratch? What could they put stuff in there that would help them, avoid doing that in the future? And that's where we as designers come in. Our role is client education. We can explain whole life costing, the benefits of circular economy to them, aid them with product selection, that we're getting the right products and the right characteristics, and also perhaps look at just how a lit space could be considered to be adaptable for future applications without actually having to go and do too much change to the infrastructure. Perhaps the hardest challenge we face is with the contractor. They've been used to doing a lot of things. It can be cheaper to go and buy a new product than get an existing product upgraded and serviced, and that's something we need to address. They're going to have to consider reuse of products and stocking of spares. That requires storage and requires an inventory, etc. All things that, as far as the contractor seems, brings costs and headaches and various other issues to their way they want to operate, and they perhaps at the moment would rather not do that approach. But again, it's for the client to look to that and start to specify that within their contractual requirements. And if we look at the manufacturer, and here we're particularly looking at Stone Lighting, who have done exceptionally well in this area already and have supported the development of TM66 wholeheartedly. You've got to look at the design of the product. How easy is it to disassemble and upgrade, etc.? where are my materials being sourced from? And we can see on this map that, with the exception of the optic holders and the optics that come from Scandinavia and Asia, all the other materials are sourced and manufactured within the UK. So they've got a very small transportation footprint to it. But also what happens now is that Sloan Lighting will actually take their products back at the end of the client's use for them. And the little spotlight we see in the top right-hand corner as an example of it is that they will take it back. Most of the existing housing and everything else is retained. It's cleaned up, tidied up, etc. And then there's modern LED optics, drivers and everything else fitted in there. But essentially the whole product then can go back into the market as a new product. It's with the same warranties and everything else. So it's being very efficient from that point of view. Now, from our point of view as WSP, as I say, designers are very important to persuade you to discuss things with the client. And we've got a big project now. National Highways are upgrading 70% of the strategic road network, the motorways, etc., in the UK to LED in order to look to net zero and to reduce the electrical consumption of their infrastructure. From that point of view, we have spoken to National Highways, we've looked at their specification, and we've discussed with them the full benefits of circular economy products. And they've been quite happy to actually look at doing that. So their program is looking at a 40% plus energy reduction. It's going to apply adaptive lighting, so control systems, so we can adjust the lighting levels depending on the traffic flows. But they see the reusability, the upgradable and repairability and durability of fixings as being a very important aspect to going forward. And also what they're doing is they're looking at what they take down now. It goes into spares. It's a requirement of the contract so that they can keep the existing infrastructure running until they get around to upgrading that area to LEDs as well. So through this project, we've established the current luminaire supplier now position. So we've been out to all the main manufacturers, we've had them do TM66 assessments. And from that point of view, we've set a baseline of a CM make score of 2.2, which is a very good score for the current climate, etc. That's the score for this year. Next year, we're looking to ramp up that score to perhaps 2.4 for 2023, and then 2024 it will be up again, because we want to keep the challenge to the manufacturers to develop and move forward and develop their products even further. So just as a parting thought, you've got two thoughts here. One is from Pete Seeger, who was a classical guitarist and everything, and was not necessarily happy, as I understand, when electric guitars came in. And his view was that if it can't be reduced, reused, repaired, rebuilt, etc., and everything, then it should be restricted, redesigned, or removed from production. And that's partly where we're looking at it from the circular economy point of view. If you can't upgrade and reuse and repurpose the product, then should it actually be within the supply chain in the first place? And then we've got this comments from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, you know, that at the end of the day, it's all very good. We've got these products, but actually circular products do not exist until someone actually looks to circulate them and does circulate them. So thank you very much for listening to us. It's now a chance for us to answer any of your questions, whether they've been put in the chat or provided beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you, Allan and Nick, for a fantastic presentation. So please log your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel, and also the presentation slides are available to download in the handout box. I will start with the first question. Your focus seems to be in large components, some of which are made up of other components. Should you not be considering all materials and components within the product?
I mean, yes, it's a valid question, but I think from what we've looked at from the UK is you've got to start somewhere. And what we've started at is a level of components where disassembly and reassembly and serviceability is fairly straightforward from the point of view of the drivers. We're not looking to break down into the drivers at the moment, but that will come. We will start to look at that in due course. And as I say, I suppose it's a bit like when I first started looking at BIM technologies. You know, you could see some people started delving into very small little details and everything else, and it started getting very confusing, and it was a very, very big picture. So if we stick with the large components at the moment, it makes life fairly straightforward for the manufacturers. If we start breaking down into different resistors and stuff, every time they change their supplier, they may well go and have to look at something. But I mean, it will come, and we've got to start somewhere.
Thank you. The next question is, are lighting manufacturers willing to share their CM make score?
They are in part. There's some natural, I think, sort of hesitation, as with anything that's new. Perhaps not so much because there is an element of they want to, retain competitive edges, and they don't want to share too much with competitors any more than they need to. But I think there's some hesitancy about, maybe they're being a bit shy, for want of a better word, of how they're scoring themselves and whether they're doing it in the right way. But we are seeing, where significant investment can be made, that is a good sort of, carrot for manufacturers to come forward. And we've been involved in sort of large rollouts of products where non-disclosure agreements and things like that have been signed between WSP and other manufacturers, so they have confidence that we're looking at their data objectively, we're comparing stuff, and any parties to large projects aren't seeing each other's data and things like that. So there's been some hesitancy, but I think they see the benefit in it, and where the right project comes up, they're very happy to share and shout about what they're doing well.
Thank you. You implied, another question is, you implied that the recycling is really not a consideration or an option. Why is that? Does it not return materials to future use? I
think what we've got to consider that if we take, for example, the luminaire that I showed from Sloan Lighting, it's basically an aluminium housing product and everything else. Now they take that back and they keep the same housing, they upgrade it and refit it out. What they could do is they could go back into the chain, but if you're going to go and put it into recycling, then you're going to use energy to melt that down, and then energy again to recast it into something else. So if we can keep that casting as it was and refit it out and everything else, then that is more sustainable than looking at the recycling side. It's not to say that recycling isn't part of it, but if we can avoid it, then that reduces the amount of carbon within the supply chain and the consideration as we go forward.
Yeah, recycling is great and is obviously better than waste, but we're at a point now where we can perhaps do something even better.
Thank you. How has the industry responded to the introduction of TM66?
Sorry, sorry, Sharon, could you just repeat that?
Yes, of course. How has the industry responded to the introduction of TM66?
I think on the whole, it's been very well received. There's been a number of conferences on it that have been well attended. There's been a lot of, this is good, we need to understand more. There is still a reluctance. It's quite interesting. At one conference, there were some clients that were really supportive of the whole process, but not quite so supportive of buying products that had been sent back to the manufacturer, upgraded and refurbished, even though they still came back with the same warranties, etc. And I think part of the problem we've got at the moment is that we're still pushing it. It can potentially be cheaper to buy a new product than look at the refurbished and the upgraded side. But we are moving forward. As more and more clients are specifying it, then the manufacturers will have to follow suit. This is partly what we've seen through the National Highways project. When we first started out, we had a good response from some manufacturers, others just almost dismissed it, but now they've realized they're missing out on a large market, and they're catching up with a couple of the others.
I think that.
Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
the parallel of circular economy that we're most used to in our own lives is probably personal electronics and things like mobile phones. And I've dropped my phone here, smashed the screen recently, and it may be cheaper to buy a new one than it is to get it repaired. If I was offered what I thought was a new phone with the same warranty as a new phone, and it was secondhand refurbished, and I didn't know that, would I ever realize or know any different? And I think it's the same for the industry, really, and in professional electronics as much as it is for consumer.
Thank you. How will the circular economy affect the lighting manufacturers? Are we still seeing resistance for change?
I think that's much along the lines of one of the previous questions, etc. I think, as I say, we have seen some reluctance, but they're now seeing that if they don't, they won't be in the market any longer. But I think the biggest challenge is for the contracting side. It's how to do this. The fact that you can go out there and upgrade. You're going to have to keep spares, refurbish things, etc. And that's where I think we're finding the biggest pushback at the moment.
Thank you. So we don't have additional questions, so we're at the end of our presentation. So thank you, Allan and Nick, for a fantastic presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you in our future webinars, and thank you for participating today. You can find Allan's and Nick's emails for follow-up. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.